Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another RedGamingTech.com video, where we are doing the podcasty thing with myself, Paul.
And me, Amata.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm pretty good, actually. I've managed to recover from my last weekend in Sheffield, which was good. And been playing lots of games, but we'll get to that later. How have you been?
Not gone to Sheffield. Mostly recovered from my plague. Gone to the gym again and thinking, oh god, why to every movement for the first couple of days. Aside from that, doing a little bit of gaming, as you know. I'm still playing a little bit of Ghostbusters. Downloaded Warcraft, and I'm thinking about going back to it for a bit, just to kind of see.
Oh no.
Well, it's not my fault. In my defense, I tried to resist, and then people keep saying to me, Paul, come back. But I don't have time. Well, you could just level together, and the person who's listening to this podcast knows who this is, Phil.
God damn it, Phil.
Yeah, like, come back. And then, are you coming back? Or are you just, like, talking about it? Oh, I might come back. Come back, we can level together. Oh, god damn it, okay. I'll come back for, like, a couple of months, and I'll just see that.
We can just level together. Don't you have to be, like, level 100 to access any content?
Yeah, but it doesn't take long. Like, from what I understand, the leveling is really fast. From what I've been told, you can do from like 1 to 20 in about an hour at best.
Okay, but from that point on it gets harder, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't get like massively.
Can't you just pay to be boosted now?
Yeah, but I don't want to do that. One of the main reasons I want to go back is because I haven't played properly, excuse me, until from like Wrath of the Lich King. So there are so many expansions, and they changed a lot of stuff with Cataclysm. So basically, I've experienced a lot. I haven't experienced
right,
like, so many levels.
You want to go back to kind of
just see what I've missed,
recalibrate, and see what they've changed.
Yeah, I'm not.
Apparently, Legion changes a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Plus, I just want to go back just for some, memories. I'm not really looking to play or raid or anything like that because I don't have the time to gear my character, and I know myself. I'm not someone who can just go in and play games like WoW casually and be a casual raider. It just doesn't work for me. I've tried previously, it just doesn't work. But I do want to just see what they've done with WoW and what the new areas are like. So I'll probably go back for a month or two. Aside from that, a few other games here and there, but not anything amazing.
Cool. I have played a few bits. I've been playing a lot more Darkest Dungeon recently. Got into that, and I'm sorry. It's one of those games where, like, the first time I played it, I messed up. So I started a new game, which is what I'm on now. And things are going a lot better, but I still feel like I wasn't as optimal as I could have been.
Is it sub?
Yes, suboptimal. So even though, like, my characters, I've got, like, a load of level 3s now, which actually takes quite a lot of work in Darkest Dungeon, because you could lose a character or two in any run, to be honest. And even despite that, I'm like, probably could have got here faster. So I'm kind of toying with the idea of restarting, but we'll see. Because the level 3 dungeons are tough. Let's just put it that way. Like, I lost my best healer on the first level 3 run that I did. Give
me an impression of how you felt inwardly.
Here's the thing about Darkest Dungeon, right? When characters get to a certain level of stress, they can either be afflicted by like a paranoia or masochism or something like that, or they can get a positive outcome. But more often than not, it's negative because this game hates you. And if a paranoia is one of the worst, because someone who's paranoid sometimes will be paranoid when you try to heal them, be like, no, I know medicine, that's not medicine, you're trying to kill me, you're trying to hurt me. And the healer was like on death's door, which is like your last chance to heal them before they die, kind of thing. And I tried to heal them, and they were paranoid. So they were like, no, I know medicine. That's not medicine.
So basically, this is someone. So basically, it turned into someone who believes in natural herbal remedies.
Basically, she became homeopath. Is basically what it is.
So new age healing, basically.
Yeah.
That's what
and
happened. Okay.
Because she wouldn't let me heal her because she was paranoid, she got killed, and a very colourful collection of words went from my mouth.
Really?
Yes. I was not impressed. I kind of hit the table and I was like, no, fuck's sake, no, my best healer. So now I'm doing like a bunch of low level stuff, and you can't take your high level ones in because I'll be like, oh, that's beneath me. So you have to do a whole low level team.
Bitch, please.
To try and level up a new healer, because I'm just like, oh god. It was a bad time.
So basically, sadness.
Yeah, and it's lucky that I even got a healer because you get new heroes at random on the stagecoach, and whether you get or not, you get a healer. Again, it's down to the dice. So
Seems fair and not rage-inducing.
it's a good game, but it is very rage-inducing sometimes.
Fair's enough.
Also played a little bit, and I do mean not even an hour, of Mafia 3, and it's been patched now. I haven't played it since the patch, but it was locked at 30 for a couple of days, which I'm just like, why? Apparently the game speed was tied to the frame rate. Why would you do that? It's my first question. And yeah, apart from that, it seems like a good game. There are some concerns about the graphics being upscaled. I don't know people's source for that, so graphics look good to me, but you know.
Okay.
Apart from that, not been playing much, to be honest. So shall we move on to the topics? They can't see that.
I'm moving my hands slowly to indicate movement in a general direction towards the topics.
Cool. So, do you want to choose one?
Okay, why don't you start out with digital Homicide? Let's start us on a high note.
Oh, yeah. So, we all know that Digital Homicide decided to sue 100 Steam users because they hurt Digital Homicide's feelings by leaving negative reviews.
Right, so
Never
we're
mind
to
that
safe space.
that's well within their rights as a consumer to do so, especially when the games themselves are utter gutter trash. And Valve removed their games from Steam because they were being hostile to customers, which, to be fair, they kind of were. And now, Digital Homicide had to drop the case against these Steam users due to financial difficulties. Basically, because Valve took their games down from Steam, they weren't getting any money in and therefore did not have the revenue to sue. Yes, exactly. Oh, it's just quite funny.
I actually wish that Valve hadn't have taken their games down, so they had gone to court just to get, slapped.
It would just get laughed out the courtroom because, like,
yeah, but then imagine
I can't remember what the guy said off the top of my head. Go watch my video on it.
something about they're ruined, aren't they?
I can't remember, but he was like the guy is delusional. He honestly felt like he had a case, and okay, the first thing is if he had a case, he would have had a lawyer. Because the fact that no lawyer would take the case kind of tells me that you don't have a case. Because if a lawyer thinks they can win, they'll take the case.
Even if it's pro bono.
Yeah, they'll take the case if they think they can win. But no one's going to take a case they know they're going to lose because, why would they do that? It's their reputation. They're not going to do that. So the fact that a lawyer wouldn't take the case tells you everything you need to know.
Even Danny Crane couldn't have won that case.
Oh, Danny Crane.
If you manage to get that reference, you get points. You get internet points.
I think even... Lionel Hutt's attorney at law would have won that case.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. So that was fun. Unfortunately, they're still suing Jim Sterling, but that's a different court case entirely.
It's going to go well for them.
Yeah, no.
Well, it depends who you're rooting for, really, doesn't it? Well, I didn't say...
I'm rooting for common sense myself, so naturally that puts me on the side of Jim.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a lull. I was like, maybe don't upset Valve when your games and your revenue are on Steam.
Yeah.
Just my pro tip for people.
Yeah, basically, it's not going to go well for you.
They can remove your games for any reason, and suing their customers is a pretty damn good reason. I mean, just throwing it out there, that's a good reason for them to remove your games from Steam. I mean, it could be wrong. Maybe I'm just crazy.
Maybe.
Anyway, what else we got? I can't quite read the things, so you're going to have to pick one.
Okay. Let us go with Phil Spencer's inferiority complex and Phil Spencer's general well-being as a person.
Oh, that was funny.
So I think there's actually two parts to this. One is Phil Spencer's comments regarding the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Scorpio and the advertising. And then you can tell them about the other bit because you covered it.
Well, I covered both, but yeah. Basically, I kind of threw this in as a freebie on my video about Phil's comments on the console war thing. and I did it just because I found it amusing. That Michael Pachter basically said that Microsoft has an inferiority complex.
Yeah, but to be honest, Phil Pachter's opinions are basically free.
Michael, you mean?
Yeah, whatever. Sorry.
Oh, it was just funny. Like, he was talking about like how Microsoft doesn't care, like that they're losing as long as they beat their own internal sales targets. Which, to be fair, he's not wrong. They probably don't care that they're losing to Sony because someone has to win, someone has to lose. But what they do care about is that they're behind on their sales targets, which makes sense. But the inferiority complex part, probably not.
No. It's like, hey, this billion-dollar company.
It's like, no, I don't think that's true at all.
And I'm pretty sure the fact that the Xbox One S, has been increased sales figures by like 1,000% in the UK, is probably doing pretty well. And Gears of War is basically selling better than water at this point. So
Microsoft are having a rough time of it, and they are behind the PS4, but. That's not what they care about. They care about the fact that they're behind on their sales targets, but that doesn't give them an inferior. I don't understand.
I mean, I was actually reading, and I did an article about this. In case you're wondering what that weird ass noise is, it's
Sorry,
Amy.
I have an itch.
Yeah. So she was like, "I'm gonna scratch my shin in a really annoying way." Anyway, so basically there was Phil Spencer on record, and I did an article about this and my opinions of it, and essentially. He defended comments and advertising from Microsoft regarding the PS4 Pro and said that he didn't think it was, criticising Sony or taking part of fanboy wars or anything like that, and he actually spoke out against fanboy comments. Now, his logic essentially was that the PS4 Pro, with the absence of the 4K Blu-ray drive, it's a legitimate tactic for Microsoft to tout that as a feature that the Xbox One S has. And of course there are other comments he made as well, like for example the games that are coming out and mod support, which is currently available for the Xbox One early, for like games like Fallout and so on.
Basically he was saying that them saying that their console has a feature that their competitor doesn't is just business. It's not inciting a console war.
Well, the fact is, the reason I'm 100% behind Phil on this is because Sony legitimately, same tactic, did it for the PlayStation 4 when they said that the PS4 was the most powerful console. They weren't lying, they weren't being untruthful, they weren't slandering Microsoft when they said it. They were just...
It's just basic business to say, hey, this customer wants this feature, I'd better tell them that we have this feature.
Exactly. But
it's not a console worry thing to be like, hey, we've got it if you want it.
But what he did say is that he doesn't like when fans of either side cheer that the other console is doing poorly or a game is received badly, because to him he thinks it cheapens the industry, which I also kind of agree with. I mean, I was back in the day with the Genesis, the SNES, when it was like the 16-bit.
Sega and Nintendo, they like basically created the console wars.
They were one of the first. I mean, there were some back in the day with Atari and their competitors, but really it became really vicious, and probably the most vicious was the 16-bit wars. And Sega, of course, would have things like blast processing, which was actually a real thing. It was how data was shunted around in the internal memory of the system. And they cottoned onto it, and then there was Sega does what Nintendo don't, and then Nintendo went into core, and it's one of the reasons that ESRB was created. They went on record, when games like Night Trap were being created in Mortal Kombat with blood. I can't remember. I can't remember the president of American Nintendo president at the time, but he went into court and basically was criticising Sega of having blood in their games and saying that we'll never have blood in our games, and that we don't believe it meets with our seal of approval. And they were basically just taking pot shots at each other all the time, and obviously that translated into really vicious wars. But basically, my point is that I agree. I think it actually hurts the industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, Phil has had a history of being very, very civil. Actually, being nice to Sony. Like what I brought up in the video about it was how he congratulated them on the success of Bloodborne. He said, well done on selling over, I think it was 1 million units or something at the time.
Which at the time, for such essentially a niche game, it is a niche game.
Yeah, for a new IP especially. and all that. You know, and Phil Spencer congratulated them, and Sony have said similar things to Microsoft, and they have been very, you know, they're competing against each other, but they've not been kicking each other in the shins like Sega and Nintendo did back in the day. But they are competing. They're going to say, we've got more power, or we've got a 4K Blu-ray disc player and our competitor doesn't. That's just basic selling. If I'm trying to sell you a product, I'm going to tell you what the product does. That's not the same as Sega does what Nintendo don't. That is not the same.
You know, I've got to say, if you ever want lols, especially if you're like a younger gamer, if you ever want some lols, have a look. There's some compilations on YouTube of the old Sega and Nintendo ads, and the Sega ones in particular are very vicious. And you can just tell that their marketing departments, they must have been in tears as they were writing these things. Like, there was one, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a blast processing, but I don't remember what game was being shown. I think it might have been Sonic versus Mario. And basically what they would do is they literally strapped 2 TVs, one on each car, to F1 cars. Yes, I'm not joking. And they had one F1 car. Actually, no, I think it's an F1 car and like a Volkswagen Beetle was the other one. And the F1, of course, represented Sega's console speed. The other one represented the SNES. And it's something like, this one has blast processing, and it switched to like Sonic doing loop-the-loops, and then it switched to like Mario slowly making little jumps and collecting coins. It was so great back in the day. I did not
see that.
You really need to check it.
I think I will do.
Yeah, it's pretty damn great.
Like, I remember the, you know, Sega does Nintendo don't thing, but I don't think I ever saw any of these ads because I was obviously very young at the time. But that's
you know the funny thing. I'll tell you another funny thing. There's a little bit of bonus information for you. But all of the Japanese folks at Sega did not like the advertising strategy of the West. Aside from the Japanese president of Sega at the time, which I don't remember the chap's name, but basically he said to them that you've got free reign to do whatever you want, and that's how it happened. And basically, he said the American guy, the American head, he said that what we need to do to sell this is to bundle Sonic with it, cut the price, and all of the Japanese were like, no, that's way too much. We're giving away our best game. He said, no, we want the system to basically be in everyone's home, and that's what they did, and they got an early jump in America with the Genesis, and of course it also sold best in Europe. Yeah. But anyway, that's a bit of random trivia. Alright, so I guess we might as well mosey on to Amy
Hennig, but yes.
Whatever. It doesn't matter what her name is.
It does, she's good.
No,
anyway, basically, she had a recent interview, and go see my video on it if you want her full comments and the people she spoke to, because I forget off the top of my head. But she was very critical of the AAA gaming industry and how it's actually pretty unhealthy, and how it needs to be fixed, because she was talking about how
the crunch, basically.
Yeah, well, yeah, she's talking about not just the crunch, but like when she was working at Naughty Dog, like sometimes, you know, she'd be working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and all this other stuff, and there were people who would just never see their families and all this other stuff, and you know, and the person who was interviewing her asked her, you know, would you say this is worth it? And she was like, well, no, none of this is worth it. You know, it's not worth like the people who have kids, like basically not seeing them grow up because they're constantly at work.
On the plus side, at least they can play their parents' video games.
Yeah, I guess.
So they're somewhat interacting with them. I'm sure
little Timmy would rather their mum or dad was actually at home sometimes. But maybe that's just me.
Well, if they don't like their parents much, maybe they prefer their games.
Regardless of that.
And maybe little Timmy hasn't yet to play Uncharted. If he did, maybe he'd change his mind.
Yeah, maybe. And to be honest, like, she's not wrong. I mean, the concept of crunch is not something unique to the gaming industry. It happens in
not seeing children. Like
Anyway, it's, you know, it's pretty much in every industry where there's like a high pressure deadline approaching. Like the crunch happens in a lot of places, but that doesn't change her point. It doesn't change the fact that it is unhealthy and it's something that needs to be sorted out, because, you know, we don't need them to work this many hours, these crazy hours, and not see their own families for these games to be made. That doesn't need to happen.
Tell that to the people who bitch when the game's delayed a week.
I would rather a game be delayed and them actually not have to basically kill themselves. And I'm sure most people who are actually sensible would agree. Because, oh no, I have to wait a couple of extra weeks. So?
Well, it depends. If they worked only like, let's say for example, if you did the mathematics on that, right?
Okay.
If you actually worked out, that's basically they're working. I'm roughly rounding up here, twice the amount of hours that they would do otherwise.
Yeah, it's like Amy was saying she used to work 80 hours a week, which is insane.
Exactly. So theoretically, the game delays would be a lot more than like, let's say, a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but you know, they don't need to work this much to get the games made. It might take a little bit longer, but it's healthier for the industry in the long term if you've not got people who are burning out and leaving and all this. I was
going to say that's the problem because there's a lot of industry churn.
You know, they're losing a lot of talent because these people just don't want to work in these conditions, and I don't blame them. You've got people who are leaving AAA gaming to form smaller studios, which is great, but you've got people who just leave the industry entirely to one that doesn't require them to basically not see their family or whatever. You know, it's just crazy. It doesn't need to be this crazy. These games can still be made without that.
I'm not sure how the pay scales in the AAA industry.
I'm not sure.
For example, I don't know if you get paid for those extra hours. Because if you did, they should really just hire other people. But
I would imagine that they do get paid, but I don't know if they get paid overtime or if it's just standard pay or whatever.
Because one of the arguments, I can't remember which game it was, which game company it was. It might have been Blizzard. But they said that the problem is if you take on more people onto a project, like let's say a project's falling behind, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that you need to get your game out next January, and it's January now. So you've been working on it 1 year. So you've got one year to go, and you need to get the game out in the space of 12 months. But you're like 3 months behind schedule, and you predict at this rate it's going to take like 18 months to get out rather than 12, right? The logical thing to say is don't get the people to work more hours, get more people involved in the project, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that to do that, by the time you get those new people in, do the interview process, and then actually get them up to speed on what the ideas behind the game are, what tools you're using, especially if it's a custom engine, then show them what animations you're doing, or showing them what the programs you've already done, and all of that, you're actually slowing down the project because invariably they're going to make mistakes.
Okay, that's a good point. But here's my question: why would you not just have a pool of people as like a backup thing, like freelancers or whatever that you know are good, that you know?
Same deal.
No, listen. So let's say you've got a pool of people, freelancers or whatever, that you've worked with before, and you can just pick up the phone and call them whenever you need them, and you don't have to do all that stuff because they're already familiar with your engine and all that. So yeah, you might have to catch them up on where you are on the project, but you are still cutting out a lot of what you just said.
Because a lot of them, remember, a lot of games are very under NDA. So for example, they won't know certain ideas, they won't know certain parts of the environment, they won't know X, Y,
I get
Z.
all that. I'm just saying, like, if you had these people like on call or whatever,
they reckon even if you have them on call, this isn't my words, there's comments from World of Warcraft, I believe it was WoW that started it, but there were a couple of other studios. No, I don't know whether I 100% believe it, but it's certainly been some excuses. What my personal thing is, as well, also early on during the game's development, a lot of the time, the core group is very small. So for example, you only have like maybe one programmer, one artist or two artists, a storyboarder, and like, I don't know, a director or whatever. And the idea is they just want the core concept, and sometimes they're just doing testing for that game. And so what happens is inevitably they start screwing up and more things come on. So it's just kind of weird. But it gets even more crazy when you start talking about DLC issues as well. So, for example, one can make a compelling argument that if someone's working, that if you've got like a team of 10, for example, in a studio, just for example, and you've got 5 of those working on the main game, and you've got another 5 working on the DLC, some would argue do you need to pull them off. But obviously, because each project and each studio is different, it's really hard to start ascertaining, and it's just a really weird situation. But I agree.
I'm not saying there's a magic easy fix, because there isn't, to be honest. Outside of gaming and in gaming, there's no easy fix, but it is something that needs to be addressed because it's not healthy for the industry in the long term for people to be working this much.
No, and of course the other problem is as games become more bigger, as they become
getting more and more complex, so the issue is just kind of compounding itself.
I mean, even things such as artificial intelligence now, they're becoming harder to create. You've got issues such as, textures now. One of the famous ones is when Nintendo switched from the Wii to the Wii U, some of their games were delayed, and you know the reason they cited? They underestimated how long it would take to create games in high definition, because what happens is, although you might think, all we have to do is create games in higher texture quality, but you can't, because you have to start focusing on like level of detail and the distance. You have to start doing better memory management, because for example closer textures or closer objects have higher level of detail, but then you need to start creating more levels of detail for different distances, because otherwise if you've got like a texture of like 15 megabytes, I'm just making it up obviously, and you've got like all of your textures at 15 megabytes for the entire scene, you're going to run out of memory real fast. So you need several levels of detail. So that means you've got to render different versions, and sometimes it doesn't look right, and you've got to do testing, and basically it just takes a lot more time.
Yeah, as I said, there's no easy fix, but it definitely is something that needs to be addressed, because we're just going to lose talent. And
no, I agree with you. It does need to be fixed.
I just don't know how.
I just don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, some folks are going to say, one good argument is, look how much money you used to spend back in the day for your PlayStation 1 games. Like, how much were they? Like £40, £50?
Something along those lines, yeah.
And how much are they now?
About the same.
Exactly. So if you start figuring out games haven't actually increased linearly in price, and that's one of the arguments. I can't remember, there was a whole debate about this a while ago, and studios said that the reason they need to increase the price of games is so that they can make more money, so that you don't have to worry about microtransactions. Other people are saying that's not true, because the studios are already making billions, and it's just a really messy situation. And then you can start actually saying, well, that's the reason that so many games are starting to become so similar.
Oh.
Gesundheit.
Was it?
So, I don't know. I don't really know what the answer is ultimately. Because, we're vastly simplifying it for this.
Well, yeah, obviously it's more complex, and we're making it sound, a problem also is with AAA games is they don't need to be as bloated as they are. They don't need to cost 500 million.
Well, that it was like Tomb Raider, the original, Tomb Raider, was it 2013?
Yeah, like it sold like 6 million copies, and Square was like, that's not enough. And I'm like, well, you spent too much money then. It doesn't need to cost that much.
No.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could rant all day about this, so we should probably move on. Let's talk about Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
On the topic of AAA games.
Which costs too much and a bit of development.
Yes. Basically, Tabata made some interesting comments in an interview, basically saying that if they were to bring it to PC, it would take them a year to do so. And it's really interesting because he made some comments a while ago, before we knew when the game was actually coming out and what platforms it was coming out on. There was some rumours going around a bit about it coming out on PC, and he said at the time, that if they were to do it, they would want to do it like from the ground up for PC kind of thing, or not from the ground up, but they would basically want to make sure that they're taking advantage of the technology as much as possible and making it like the best version there is. And I can't remember the exact wording he used then versus now, but the wording he uses, like, this is what I would do, and this is what I'd like to do, because like, it basically makes it sound like they're seriously considering a PC version of the game, but they want to get the console versions out.
Well, remember, I did cover an article about this as well, that there is a PS4 Pro version of Final Fantasy 15, or rather it does support it.
Yeah, he did say they will be supporting that as well as HDR as well, so it's interesting. So obviously they got the launch to worry about, the inevitable updates and day one patches and all that other stuff, as well as PS4 Pro and bugs and all of that. So once you got that out of the way, and there is DLC for the game, you can kind of see like why they need so long to do the PC version, but I just really hope they do.
Yeah.
That would be awesome, to be honest. So, it seems like
I think it will come out. PC gaming is booming
I think they're considering it, and obviously PC games in Japan, not a big deal, but obviously Final Fantasy is pretty big
Console
in the West.
gaming in Japan is not really a big deal at the moment. A lot of people are switching to... Did you see the PS4 sales figures in Japan?
No.
They were abysmal. In fact, all the console sales figures have been abysmal, apart from, I think it was the 3DS.
Yeah, they're very into mobile gaming.
It's because of
Japan.
space.
Yeah. And well, it's because they work long hours and they're travelling a lot, so they can just take the 3DS on the subway or whatever.
Yeah, and have like 1 centimetre player.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It seems like Square are at least considering bringing it to PC, and I think, you know, given that they brought a lot of their games to PC that they probably wouldn't have previously in the last like couple of years. Final Fantasy 9's come to PC, Final Fantasy 10's come
Even
to
Hitman,
PC.
technically, Tomb Raider.
Yeah, well, those games would have, because that's the Western arm of Square. But I'm talking about like their Japanese games. They've all come to PC eventually. It took a while, but they came, and I think they're definitely aware that despite the lack of PC popularity in Japan, they basically would be giving up free money if they don't bring it out on PC. So I think they will. It'll just take them a while to do so, and I'd rather they take their time and give it the best version. So yeah, what else have we got to talk about?
We can talk very quickly about Vega and also Summit Ridge for desktop.
Go for it.
So Summit Ridge, the release date has supposedly done the leaky thing.
Okay.
And it's looking like it's going to be early 2017. So we're talking maybe the first month or two, which is absolutely phenomenal, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because the motherboards are already starting to go on sale now for OEMs. So that's your Dells and, you know, whomever else. But that's obviously not for the for Zen. That's just the AM4 motherboard platform. And supposedly we're going to then start seeing the AM4 Summit Ridge processors, the Zen-based ones, coming out early first quarter.
Right.
And then we've got Vega, and oh boy do we have Vega. So basically, the too long didn't read, because I've covered several topics over the last couple of days. But basically, the too long didn't read is that we're going to get an ultra super duper high end, you know, beautiful shiny version, which is going to be high bandwidth memory 2 and all of that, and supposedly it's going to be shown off end of this year.
Alright.
That's going to be like the super high end version.
Yeah.
And then those variants are going to trickle into various Vega 10 graphics cards.
Okay.
Which are going to be obviously aimed at consumers as well as prosumers. So that's going to be for like servers as well.
Right.
Or high end compute. And also, so the high end Vega, as I said, is going to be out, and there's supposedly going to be a couple of different variants.
Okay.
But the other one is the Vega 11. Now, Vega 10 is going to be the high end cards. So basically, think of those cards as the equivalents of the 1080 Ti or the 1080. But they're going to probably perform faster from the rumours.
Okay.
But Vega 11 is going to replace Polaris. So it's going to replace the RX 480, 470 and 460. And how it's going to do that, from what I'm hearing, is it's going to have A, much higher clock speeds, B, it's going to have a tweaked architecture, and C, they're supposedly going to make a few other little changes internally to make the card a bit more, I don't know, just generally faster. That's what they're saying anyway, the rumours. So we should start seeing this come out some point late first quarter / maybe second quarter of 2017, and that's going to be really interesting because obviously that's going to be competing against a supposed refresh of the GTX 1080 series or 10 series rather.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes, many interesting.
You also had some stuff about Summit Ridge?
No, I talked about that with the release date.
Oh yeah, sorry, the PlayStation 4 stuff is what I meant, yeah.
So I don't want to turn this into a whole thing, because otherwise this video will be like about 45 minutes longer. But
oh, he's still got time.
Yeah, but well, it's already 34 minutes, so I don't want to add another 45 on top.
No.
But I will be doing a full analysis on the PS4 16-bit double float performance.
Yeah. Over
the next few days, because I've got a lot of people messaging me on Twitter and Facebooks and everything. But basically, the idea is, too long didn't read. The Polaris architecture had already better 16-bit performance naturally, 16-bit float performance naturally.
Right.
Basically, it was on the tweaks that they made.
Okay.
But Sony supposedly made even further tweaks to it.
Okay.
And so games developers, for certain operations, they can choose, rather than a 32-bit float, they can opt to use a 16-bit float. Now, the idea behind that is if they do that, for the time it takes to perform one 32-bit operation, they can instead perform two 16-bit float calculations. Now,
right, so basically, if they don't need 32, they can do two 16s?
Yeah, in the same time.
Right.
Now, the purpose behind that is basically if you don't need that level of precision, basically a float is, you probably know this from basic maths, a float is a decimal point. So basically, in a nutshell, the higher the float number, the percentage, or rather the bit number of a float, the greater the number of, basically the more the, sorry, I had to wait for an ambulance to pass, which is why I was like, okay, well, going to be pausing then. So basically, the higher the number of float, or the higher the bit value of a float, the greater amount of precision. So it's almost like, for example, if you have 1.1, to 1.2, there's like a 10% value right there, yeah? But if you have like 1.12, it's obviously more precise. If you have 1.21, it becomes even more precise, and so on and so on and so on. So basically, the higher the bit value, the more precise, because the more numbers it allows in the float. So the idea is that if you have a high bit value, a 32-bit float, you can use that for certain operations. For example, you could use that for artificial intelligence or XYZ coordinates on really large levels, and eventually we're probably going to get towards that on like super in-depth virtual reality gaming.
Right.
This is going to be 64-bit. But for now, most games are calculating all in 32-bit. However, Nvidia and AMD and other companies are starting to push towards 16-bit floats for certain operations. For example, some physics calculations or artificial intelligence or anything that doesn't need super precision.
Right, so basically the tweaks from Sony are just making more efficient use of what they have, essentially. Yeah,
it's basically saying to the engine, it's basically not all calculations can be, and I've had some people wrongly say, well, it doesn't do anything. It actually does. It just doesn't do anything for all operations, because some operations will be integers, which obviously is like 1 plus 1.
Right.
Some operations will be, very simple floats, and some operations will be very complex floats.
Well, yeah, some will need the whole 32.
Exactly. So really, it comes down to the level of optimization the developers have wanted to give. Unfortunately, during the interviews that I've looked at and from comments from developers, how much work it takes to optimize that level of float and whether it's automated or not hasn't been 100% revealed.
Yeah, but it's still a good thing, because even if only some of the things make use of it, it's still better than what it was.
Yeah, it still should be nice. For example, it could theoretically be handy for doing things like doing a basic culling of a scene. For example, let's say that early in the GPU cycle, the pipeline, it could do a very basic thing of saying, is this object within these coordinates of the camera's view? So you don't need a high level of precision of float for that, especially for like further out, or if an object is behind this car.
Right.
So for example, it could use that type of thing, or some compute orientated things, or maybe some basic lighting, especially at long distances where you've got level of detail values as well.
Right.
But obviously at the end of the day, how it's used, if it's used, is very is down to, well, everything, because the comments weren't super in depth from the developer. And the second thing I've been asked multiple times is, will it happen for the Scorpio? I'd be very shocked if not. Let's put it that way. So I think the Scorpio will definitely have similar tweaks to its architecture.
Yeah, of course. We don't know much about the Scorpio, but as you say, I would be surprised if they didn't have something similar. So
anyway, I think the last thing was Daydream.
Oh yes. Almost forgot about this. Google have announced their own VR headset. Basically,
who hasn't at this point?
Yeah, that's true. Basically, it's their answer to the Samsung Gear VR. It's a mobile virtual reality, but you put your phone into, so it's not going to be like toppling the Rift or the Vive anytime soon.
Right.
But that's not what it's meant for. Basically, as you probably know, the Gear VR is, you can only use it with Samsung phones, certain Samsung phones.
Right.
But the Daydream can be used with a...
Before I forget, did I tell you about the new feature about the Gear VR?
No.
It's actually really cool.
Okay.
Basically, if you're playing a game, sometimes the Gear VR will burst into flames, and it's to simulate like random wildfires.
What are you talking about?
Haven't you heard about the random Samsung phones that have just randomly exploded?
Oh, yeah, that's the Note 7.
No, phones as well.
Really?
And, yeah, and an iPhone as well. Recently, I think it was iPhone 6 exploded, and something else went as well.
Right. Good times.
On the positive side, the phone is only near your balls or vagina.
Fun.
Mm.
Free castration, I guess.
Yeah. Plus, you won't need to worry about having kids.
Anyway, yeah, so the Gear VR can only be used with Samsung, but the Daydream can be used with the new Google Pixel phone, but it can also be used with third-party Android phones.
For me, who is pretty ignorant on phones, to be honest, mostly because I have not that much interest in them.
Yes.
What is the Pixel like? Is it good?
I'm not actually sure, to be honest. Apparently it's selling very well, but I haven't actually looked
So
at
is
the
the
Pixel.
iPhone 7, that doesn't tell us much.
I haven't looked at, you're asking the wrong person. I haven't looked at the Pixel.
Okay.
I don't know. All I know is, yes, you can use it with that, but you can also use it with, say, any Android phone that has the power to actually do it. So it's actually pretty cool, and the price is about right, £69 if I recall correctly, which is not too terrible. We don't know much about the specs other than that, to be honest. The release date, I can't quite recall off the top of my head, but it looks interesting, actually. Yeah.
Would you buy it?
I mean, I was thinking of getting a Samsung's anyway, because I like Samsung, and so I could use the Gear VR.
But then the recent recent explosions of phones.
Now at least I have the option, if you just have like a third-party phone, like a HTC or whatever, you can just get the Daydream, which is nice, actually. It's nice. Because we haven't really had an answer to the Gear VR yet from anybody. And because it's Google, they'll probably do really well.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, a lot of Google's projects have not ever fallen over.
Well, at least it's not the glass, which was just silly.
I don't understand how they thought that was going to do well.
I don't know. This probably will do decently, at least.
At least it wasn't Virtual Boy.
Mobile VR. That's for more watching films than games, but it still could be good. It has its applications.
Like porn?
Yes, exactly.
Primarily.
I would imagine that a lot of people buying the Daydream are going to be doing the VR porn.
They're going to be daydreaming about something.
Yes, they sure are.
Soothing Cat is definitely watching them masturbate.
Yeah, Soothing Cat is watching them masturbate, but watching them masturbate in VR.
You know what would be great? Here's VR reception for you, right?
Okay.
So I know someone needs to do this.
Right.
So what they do, they've got a woman watching porn on a dream, right?
Okay.
But then that is a porn, right? And she's masturbating.
Okay.
Right. And that's filmed, so then you can watch that on your own dream. So basically, it's like you're watching porn within porn.
Pornception.
Yeah.
Nice.
How awesome is that on so many different levels?
That would be pretty cool.
And then what you could even have is like multiple little things. So you can see what she's watching on screen, and then obviously you've got her in the main screen, so you can see like her watching whatever and masturbating to that. But then you've got like the big screen like showing her.
Right.
So it's almost like a little cam window of what she's seeing.
Someone get on it, porn directors, get on it. You've had your free idea. Have it and enjoy.
I'm a fountain, what can I say?
Anyway, on that note...
I don't think we can really go... I don't think there's anywhere that can really go after that.
No. So, I'm just going to call it there. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next week.
You look a bit like, okay, I'm done now.
Well, we can't top that, so let's just finish there.
You can, if you're watching enough porn, you can top something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll take care.
Bye.
Bye.